Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat here today with the final edition of the Downward Spiral. So this is a mini series I've been doing over the past few weeks on my channel where I basically review episodes of The Promised Neverland Season 2 as they air on Toonami Saturday nights at 1:30 in the morning. So what I'm going to do here is to give a brief synopsis episode and then my very interesting thoughts on it. Now, the episode begins where we left off with Emma offering her hand to Peter Rattray to say, "Hey, things can change. I want you to come with us to the human realm." And then he basically gives his brief family story of why he can't, why he takes pride in being part of the Rattray clan, and then he just completely offs himself in front of Emma. And at this point, they decide, okay, he's not coming with us, so let's all go down to the elevator. They go to the elevator and they go to a door in front of a pond that had absolutely no significance in the manga or anything. And we have the kids stand at the door, open it with one of the pens, and then instead of leaving to Earth or the human realm with the rest of them, Emma, Ray, Norman, and the Lambda kids decide to stay back and let the kids, along with the mothers, especially Isabella, cross over and saying, well, basically, then you see a nice 2-3 minute long scene basically explaining, well, we have to go back and like reforge this promise. We have to kind of make sure things are okay between the humans and demons here so they won't like come after us. So then afterwards, they ultimately show basically a sequence of events of what the kids, what the mothers did after coming to the human realm. And I guess it looks like they ended up like in New York City or a city similar to it. Like I initially thought, oh, this is supposed to be Tokyo because, anime Japan. But they showed some of the buildings that look very tenement style. And as far as I'm aware, there's no buildings of that style anywhere in Tokyo. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be something like the Lower East Side of Manhattan or something. So then they have the kids, they show like them do this, and then they show a montage of events of what Emma and the rest of the gang went up to as they traveled, reforged the promise, and then it shows several years later them coming back to the human realm where Emma once again meets up with Phil. And yeah, that's really as far as you can do a synopsis of this episode. For being a finale, not that much actually happens. Like I said, it's like you have basically the scene with Rattray offing himself, and then you have the whole like, will they, won't they cross the door, and then you show like 3 minutes of them talking about, well, we should probably stay back, and then you have a montage. So I'm gonna just go step by step into this utter shit sandwich of an episode. First thing I noticed that was horrible was you have this like the backstory that Peter Rattray gave. The animators just gave up. It's like, there's a certain like joke of going PowerPoint mode in a show, especially a low budget show or a show towards the end when the animators and the writers clearly stopped caring. And the latter is definitely the case here because it's like they show like frame, he's crying, frame. And it's like they did the crappy animation of like his mouth is just open, so they have words come out, and it's like he's speaking, but they don't even like they don't even try to mimic the mouth movements at all. They do this, and like the plot of this scene is very confusing too. It's like, okay, so like my brother figured out like the whole concept of our grandfather or great grandfather doing the promise. Oh, sorry, they don't even mention the great grandfather here. But like, yeah, there was a promise that involves our family somehow. He hated it, but I felt like honored to be part of history. So I wanted to keep this going. My brother's against it. Couldn't let this brother stop me, so I had him killed. But then like I cried over his corpse, and ironically, and that's basically it. And honestly, of all the bad stuff that happens this episode, the one good thing that happens is that you actually, and Peter decides he doesn't want to put up with Emma's talk no jutsu shit anymore, so he just offs himself, which also is very wise because that's the only way he can escape the fate of being involved in this montage at the end of the episode. And at least I'll give him that. He went on his own terms, and despite being a horribly created villain, at least he stuck to his guns and how he died. He didn't have this revelation moment or anything. That's one thing it does better than Steven Universe. Like, Steven Universe, you have characters be like, straight up do genocide, and it's like, oh no, this character just sang a song. Okay, they're good now. And now, back to The Promised Neverland, it's just. And also back to. And another thing, it's like, for a series, for a season that's been basically a fancy speed run, you have this moment where they just stop at scenes for no real reason whatsoever. Like I mentioned, we had two different scenes about the damn fish that were on trees. And here you spend 5 minutes on something that could take like 20 seconds of basically Emma talking to Phil, talking to the kids, saying, hey, we're staying back and fixing it. You all go in ahead of us, live great lives, basically. And we hope to see you soon. And like that scene was more like a back and forth saying the same stuff and over again. It's like, but we'll miss you. I know we'll be back soon. But we'll miss you. I know I'll be back soon. It reminded me of the scene at the very beginning of Freddy Got Fingered, where Tom Green's character gets like a LeBaron, and he's like talking to Rip Torn, who is his dad, and he was like, "I'm gonna make you proud, Dad." And he's like, the dad's like, "I hope you make me proud, son." He's like, "I'm gonna make you really proud, Dad." This goes on for 2 minutes. The thing is, that was supposed to be intentionally a joke, like a parody of the whole like son, like the hero's journey, a parody of the hero's journey, where it's like, I'm gonna make people proud, and the dad's like, I hope you do, son. And it's like over and over again. But in that case, it actually got funnier the further you got on. This time, it just felt like you're wasting time, especially considering that you decide to wrap everything up in a montage at the end, which I will be getting to in a second. And what else from the scene? And there's one thing that's set up in the scene too, like it's kind of been present throughout The Promised Neverland, especially this season, where they imply that like Emma has a deeper connection specifically to Phil relative to the other kids. And I know this is supposed to show like some form of surrogacy that Emma took on of being basically Phil's mother, as she basically served as the mom, the team mom of all the other kids in the Gracefield house. However, I never understood why she has a specific connection to him more than like the other kids, specifically the other kids she left behind, like the infants at the Gracefield house. I never got that. And then like when like they met up last episode, they specifically stopped the episode to have this moment where like Emma's hugging Phil. And considering how bad that episode was, that was actually one of the better moments in it. I don't get here because they do this at like this point where it's like Phil's like, I'm gonna miss you, Emma. I'm gonna miss you. And she's like, I'll be there for you. And it's like, and then at the very, very end of the episode, you have Phil walking up, seeing this crowd of people, recognizing all the kids are the different kids from the Gracefield house, and seeing Emma, and she's like, I'm back. And it's like this emotional, and they set up like this emotional moment. And it's like, I don't get why this is with Phil. Why would it be with Phil and not with someone like Nat or someone like Jemima? Like other kids that I literally had to look up the name for here. And I get it. Like people are like the Cold of Phil, and I get it. For as much as he appears, he's kind of a meme, and I don't dislike Phil's character at all. It just seems weird they specifically fixate on him to a degree in the show. Especially they did this to a degree in the first season. If they had a scene where it's like Emma saved Phil last second or something, or Phil saved Emma last second, and they formed this specific like personal bond, I would have understood this. I don't remember anything like that. It just seems weird to me and maybe a nitpick, especially relative to, like I said, the utter shit sandwich this episode was. But at the same time, it's just a weird thing to fixate on. Okay, now on to the montage. Oh boy, I bet when you first saw this episode, especially if you watched it for the first time last night, saw this montage, saw all the weird stuff that happened in it. I bet some of you are like, I wonder how Super Orange Cat's gonna react to it. Well, here's your answer. I laughed the first time I saw it. I had to go back. I DVR each episode, by the way. I had to go back, rewatch that scene to make sure I was actually watching the show and I didn't just like imagine what happened on the screen. And oh boy. Okay. So some of the imagery you see in this of like specific events of like people point out the scene where like Emma and Mujiko are holding hands, or the scene where like Emma is in front of like this floating demon with this like epic dragon in the background. Like, what the hell's going on here? This wasn't set up. Well, it was set up in the manga. And admittedly, it was set up poorly in the manga too. But the anime is like, instead of having, it could have just ended really happy go lucky, devil may care, and be like, well, we're all in the human world now and ended it there. And I don't think so many people, especially anime only viewers, would have asked that many questions. But the fact they went back and tried like covering, and note the quotation marks I put around covering other events in the manga really, really just make no. It just really seems weird, you know. And especially because, and I promise you, for those who have no idea about the manga, those who've only watched the anime, those scenes have importance in the manga. Those matter to a degree. Those aren't just random images. And also too, and that just really, like, that's the name of the game. That's, if there's one thing out of circled out the season that ultimately led to the issues, it was how they speed ran through everything. Like, for example, Goldie Pawn arc never happens. You have multiple characters who are important to the plot that you see starting in the Goldie Pond arc. They're never mentioned, they're never seen. Like, if you're an anime only viewer, you don't know who Yugo is, you don't know who Lucas is, you don't know who Nigel is. These are characters that actually play a role in the manga, including some of the scenes they actually adapted, but they had to write out because these people don't exist. And it just really, really seems weird. And I get it. And it's like this whole, and the reason why this happened was basically, ultimately, the anime usually for a show is there to promote the manga. By the time season 2 started airing, the manga already finished. So, since they know that the interest in the show was going to wane over time, especially in Japan, where by January when this first aired in Japan, interest in the Promised Neverland was already definitely dying out. Because, I mean, it was effectively an ended property at this point. They're like, okay, let's just finish this up in one season, you know. And again, with the material the show had, they could have easily made this a 5, 6 season show with all the stuff that happens here, you know. But again, they rush through things because it's like, we already signed a commitment to season 2. We can't back out of it. Interest is waning. Might as well just finish it now. And some people are like, it's going to get like a Full Metal Alchemist treatment where we get Brotherhood, Promised Neverland Brotherhood. I don't think that's going to ever happen because the whole point of Full Metal Alchemist and Brotherhood was when Full Metal Alchemist was actually on the air, the manga had not finished, and it finished after it finished, so it had to write its own BS ending. So for Brotherhood, they could go back and do that. Promised Neverland, the manga already finished. The manga was already well finished by the time they finished animating the end of the season. I think they just wanted to finish this property, get over with, and write it off as a loss at this point. And ultimately, it's just a damn shame considering how absolutely amazing the first season was. Now, some of the things I want to go back into in the montage. Okay, so I'm going to say some spoilers to the manga now to explain some of this. And what I'm going to do is, if you don't want to be spoiled on the manga, if you want to read it for yourself, I'm going to probably post a time in my description saying when I'm finished with the spoiler stuff so you can go back and go to there and keep on watching the video. Okay, so here starts the spoiler. Okay, so basically the premise was that, like, the great 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 grandfather, whatever, of Peter and James Rattray was a soldier fighting the demons. And what Sanju said was correct about the whole humans and demons have been crossing over each other, trying to attack and kill each other for a while, and it turned into this full-on war. However, Rattray, being basically a coward, wanted to end this war. What he did is that he approached the floating demon, which is some high priest of the demons, and said, I want to end this war. What are your terms for ending this war? And basically the high priest is like, okay, we'll end this war. Just let us capture a number of your humans and we'll basically farm them. Rattray, wanting to end the war, was like, okay, we'll do this, right? So he agrees to it, and that's basically the initial promise. The initial promise is that a number of humans are forced to stay behind and basically led to be livestock for these demons. And the demons in the human and demon realm be separate, and they won't attack each other. No demons can cross over to the human realm, and no humans from the demon realm can cross over to the human realm. Those are forbidden. So ultimately, and also being the guy who created this piece, Rattray was given a high position among the demons to basically help oversee this. That's why the Rattray clan is revered among demon culture despite being humans. And what the secondary promise was, like, because you have Emma talking about, we want to forge a new promise. What it ultimately was Emma had to go back to the same guy and say, I want to create a covenant where humans can go back to the human realm from the demon realm. He was like, okay, but for this to happen, I need something personal from you. I need you to make a sacrifice. So ultimately, Emma decides to make the sacrifice of basically losing all of her memories of all of her friends and her time in the demon realm. Because, and it's important to her because, just from her character, like her family that's her personality. That's everything she loved was her family, and her memories of them were what kept her going, knowing that it's her duty to save her family. Because, like I said, she became the surrogate mother to everyone. So then she's like, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice my memories. The demon guy hears it and's like, okay, I understand. You're making a good sacrifice. I'll do this covenant for you. So then they do it, and then Emma gets sent back to the human realm with no memories whatsoever, so she doesn't know shit. So she's like wandering around aimlessly, happens to encounter, I think, some of the other kids, and like, Emma, it's you. And she's like, who are you? And then like everyone comes together, and she has this like emotional moment where she's like, I don't know who you are, but I felt like I want to hug every single one of you right now, or something like that, and that's how it ends. Which is a much better ending than what we get here. Okay. And it's like this whole thing where it's like, and I was worried about this. I was worried about this a couple episodes ago when, like, they're going to make this a Disney Channel style ending where everyone ends up very, very happy. And that's what happens here. And based on the fact that you have Emma basically talking to Phil as if, oh, yeah, this is the kid I raised, such a way implies she never had to lose her memories. So she never had to make a personal sacrifice for this. And that was so important to the concept of making a promise that you had to sacrifice something where I think it was Cornelius or whatever Rattray, the original Rattray, basically sacrificed all of his comrades to be livestock for this promise to happen. And she had to sacrifice all she loved, all she knew and loved about her family. And at the same time, that was a good thing because it allowed, and this is a very characteristic moment too of her character, because Emma, as much as she loves and cares for her family, she will do whatever it takes for them. And if she has to forget they ever existed with the promise that they would be safe, she would take that in a heartbeat. And at the same time, that was still kind of disliked when that came out in the manga. So the anime, they just whitewashed that part and were like, oh, everyone's happy, everyone has this good ending. Oh, and here's another thing. You have this brief, okay, spoiler over. I'm just going to go back into how things are. Okay, so you basically have this whole very brief scene where it's like the royal court of the demons, and then you have one of like the pages come in and be like, "Sire, sire," and it's like, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. This is the queen. You're in the presence of the queen." He's like, "I have bad news. Grace Fieldhouse has fallen," and then like this guy's like taken aback by this, and that's all you see of the royals, by the way. And it's implied, and even Ray says when they're discussing we should stay back, saying like, the royals are gonna be after this, and they're gonna be pissed. And like, and this is gonna be the hardest battles we'll ever to fight. And then you see a montage where you never see the royals again. You just kind of see them going place to place, telling people, you've been liberated. And like basically Mujika coming around and Mujika being made the queen, which can only happen if you kill the other queen, which is an epic fight scene in the manga you don't see here, by the way. And it's just like, and it's like you skip over that thing, which was one of the better liked parts of the end stages of the manga. You just pretend that never happened. You just show the queen for like 1 second, and that's it. And it's like the whole thing. It's like it almost feels like an OPMC anime at this end here. It's like this is the strongest, most powerful villain you've ever faced, and then you have like Saitama come and punch him one time and game over, or something like that. That's what it feels like. Except for they never had to do anything, and they just show up in New York City years. Like I'm guessing based on how they aged up the characters, which is why I'm using this picture here for my video. It feels like they aged him up, I'll say like 3-4 years is my guess. Phil looks like he aged up like 9 years. Like he looks like he's about to go to high school after being like 5 or 6. And then you have everyone look like they're like early teenagers now. Like you have Gilda and Don look like they're in high school. Don looks like he should be in college right now. And then you have like the other kids at like 5 or 6 look like they're about to go into middle school or something. Like 3-4 years. And like later, everyone is happy. Everyone's like, "Oh, we did it! We did it! Yeah, we just kind of walked around we just kind of walked around the villages, and they all celebrated us." At least that's the impression they give with this. Oh yeah, and I met a dragon. That dragon has no importance. Why do you think they only showed it for one scene? And then it reminds me kind of like how Adventure Time ended. Because if you remember the series finale of Adventure Time, it ends basically with like a montage of like what happens in the future after they defeat Golb. But at the same time, as much as I shit on that one too, least everything that happens there was explained in some degree already in the show. Like it's like, oh, they show Princess Bubblegum and Marceline be together. Well, they kissed in the finale. Oh, you show like Finn and Jake doing stuff. Well, yeah, they're still adventures. Oh, you show all the humans coming back. Well, there was a whole mini series about all the humans on the different islands. Like you have stuff like that that was at least explained to some degree and just kind of forced the end. This one, they just threw images at you. And again, it's a PowerPoint. It wasn't even like a straight up montage. They show frames, and again, they play like a violin version of Isabella's Lullaby, and like I say, when there's a violin instrumental, I'm gonna say the joke because it's probably reminds Norman that one time he was in the Chick-fil-A bathroom, pissing out his third Coca-Cola, deciding whether or not Emma would be willing to commit sin with him in the bed of Isabella's Ford F-150. You know, and that's what it just felt like to me. At the same time, it just felt like we stopped caring. Oh, we have material for a third season? Just do a PowerPoint at the end. Not even a montage. Let's just do a PowerPoint at the end. And that was just so frustrating to see, especially how amazing the first season was. To have the second season, I would accept the second season being like a disappointment. Like the first few episodes in itself was a step down from the original season. But looking back at what's happened since then, especially the last couple episodes, looking back at the first 3 episodes where they like meet up with Sanju Mujika, those look absolutely amazing by comparison, Those episodes I gave like 6s out of 10. This episode, this episode, I'm gonna have to give a 2 out of 10. Why a 2 and not a 1? Because I have to at least respect Peter Rattray, knowing that there was only one true way out of not being ending in the montage at the end of the show. And also one more and it's like one more thing, it's just like, God. And it's like, I hope Yashahime is better than this. I've heard mixed things about Yashahime. Yashahime, it's not going to be a straight substitution. Yashahime will be airing at 1 in the morning starting next week. I believe Food Wars will get the boot down to 1:30 because, geez, I mean, this is an easy act to follow. Usually when they're like, oh, it's a hard act to follow. No, this is an easy act to follow. As long as Yashahime doesn't outright suck, it will be a step up for Toonami. Like, I saw, like, when it first came out, I saw, like, on Twitter, Promised Neverland was trending. I didn't want to click it, but I saw someone say, that was the worst ending of any anime ever. And I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be fun. And that's part of my reason why I decided I'm gonna have to make this a weekly thing, don't I? And I feel like Super Orange Cat action, I have good news for you. Today is gonna end up being a double video day because I will be doing a quick review of the Rick and Morty Season 5 premiere tonight. So stay tuned for that. And there's a lot more I could say about The Promised Neverland, and I think I'll probably ultimately do that in like another separate video, like maybe a few weeks from now when, the dust is settled and I can kind of wrap my thoughts and actually write a script out for this. I might do that. And maybe soon enough I'll actually get that first waifu video out there too. I've been admittedly way too slow on the research for that. So what do you guys think? Did you like the downward spiral? Did you like seeing my mental state deteriorate over the last 9 or 10 weeks? Leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. I love your input. I am the Super Orange Cat, and that is all.